You know how everyone says they're going to find themselves after a major life crisis? How they're going to take a road trip, clear their head, figure out who they really are. I used to think that was the most cliché, privileged bullshit ever. Like, oh, you're going through something hard, so you're just going to drive around aimlessly while the rest of us deal with our problems like adults? Yet, well, I became that cliché. And what happened to me on that road trip is something I still can't fully explain, even 6 months later. My name is Sarah Chen, I'm 34 years old, and until last March, I was living what I thought was a pretty solid life in Austin, Texas. I had a good job as a graphic designer at a marketing agency, a nice apartment in South Congress, a husband I'd been with for 8 years, married for 3. We had plans, you know? Kids eventually, maybe buy a house, the whole American dream thing. Then I found out Derek had been sleeping with someone from his CrossFit gym for over a year. Not just sleeping with, like, in love with. Planning a future with. He told me over dinner at our favorite Thai place, which somehow made it worse. He ordered pad Thai and destroyed my entire life in the same breath. The divorce was quick and ugly. Texas is a community property state, so we split everything down the middle. The apartment was a rental, so that was easy enough to break. We didn't have kids, thank God. I kept wondering if I should feel more devastated, but mostly I just felt empty. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left just a shell walking around pretending to be a person. I threw myself into work for a few months, but my heart wasn't in it. My designs started feeling stale and uninspired. My boss, Rachel, called me into her office one day in late July and basically told me I needed to take some time off before I burned out completely. "You're one of my best designers, Sarah," she said, "but you're running on fumes. Take a few weeks. Go somewhere. Do something that has nothing to do with work or Austin or your ex. Come back when you're ready." So that's how I found myself, on a Wednesday morning in early August, loading up my Honda CR-V with a suitcase, my laptop, some snacks, and absolutely no plan whatsoever. I pointed the car west and just started driving. I know what you're thinking. This is where I tell you I had some profound revelation on the open road, found inner peace, learned to love myself again, all that eat pray love nonsense. But that's not what happened. For the first 3 days, I just drove. I took Highway 290 west through the hill country, spent a night in a crappy motel in Junction, drove through Big Bend National Park, stayed in Marfa for 2 nights because everyone said it was supposed to be cool and artistic and healing. It was just hot. And filled with hipsters taking Instagram photos. I felt nothing. No catharsis, no healing, no grand revelations. Just numb. On the 6th day, I was somewhere in New Mexico, on some back highway I'd taken on a whim because the main road was boring. It was one of those long, empty stretches where you can go 30 miles without seeing another car. Desert on both sides, mountains in the distance, the kind of landscape that's supposed to make you feel small and contemplative. Mostly it just made me need to pee. I'd been driving for about 2 hours without seeing any gas stations or rest stops when I noticed my gas tank was getting dangerously low. Like, below a quarter tank low. And my phone had no signal, so I couldn't even check Google Maps to see where the nearest town was. Real smart, Sarah. Real smart. I started to panic a little. I mean, dying alone in the New Mexico desert because you were too depressed to check your gas gauge is a pretty pathetic way to go. I kept driving, watching the needle drop closer and closer to empty, scanning the horizon for any sign of civilization. Then, just when I was seriously considering pulling over and trying to figure out if I could walk to anywhere, I saw a sign. It was old and weathered, the kind of wooden sign you'd see in a Western movie. Hand-painted letters that said, Esperanza 5 miles. I'd never heard of Esperanza, but I didn't care. I just needed gas and maybe some water and a bathroom. I took the exit, more of a dirt road, really, and followed it into what looked like empty desert. 5 miles became 6, then 7. I was about to turn around, convinced the sign had been some kind of abandoned relic and the town didn't exist anymore, when I crested a small hill and there it was. Esperanza. It looked like it had been plucked straight out of the 1950s and dropped into the desert. A main street with maybe 15 or 20 buildings, a general store, a diner, what looked like a town hall, a few houses scattered beyond the main drag. Everything was painted in faded pastels: turquoise, pink, yellow, mint green. There were flower boxes in the windows, old-fashioned street lamps, and in the center of town, a plaza with a fountain. It was charming in a surreal, almost uncanny way. Like a movie set, too perfect and too empty to be real. I pulled up to what looked like a gas station, a single pump out front of the general store. An old man was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch, wearing overalls and a straw hat. He stood up as I got out of the car. "Afternoon," he said with a warm smile. "Don't get many visitors out here. Welcome to Esperanza." "Thanks," I said, approaching cautiously. "Do you, take credit cards? For the gas?" He chuckled. "Sure do. Pump's old but it works. You fill up, then come inside and we'll settle up. You look like you could use some water too. On the house." I filled up my tank while he disappeared inside the store. When I walked in, he handed me a cold bottle of water from an ancient-looking refrigerator. "Thank you so much," I said, practically chugging half of it. I thought I was going to be stranded out there. "These desert roads can be tricky," he said. "Name's Frank, by the way. Frank Cordova." "Sarah. Sarah Chen. Pleased to meet you, Sarah." "Passing through." I nodded. "Yeah, just driving. Needed to get away for a while." Something in his expression softened. Running from something or running to something? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. Both? Neither. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Esperanza's a good place for that. For folks who don't quite know where they're going yet. I paid for the gas and was about to leave when Frank said, "You should stay for dinner at least. Rosie's Diner makes the best green chili stew in New Mexico. You won't find anything else for another 50 miles anyway." I hesitated. Something about this town felt off in a way I couldn't quite articulate. But I was hungry, and the idea of getting back in the car and driving for another hour sounded exhausting. "Okay," I said. "Sure. Why not?" Rosie's Diner was straight out of a time capsule. Red vinyl booths, a long counter with spinning stools, a jukebox in the corner playing old country music. There were maybe a dozen people inside, all of whom looked up when I entered. Small town, I figured. Stranger walks in, everyone notices. A woman in her 60s, with silver hair in a bun and a kind face, came over immediately. "You must be the visitor Frank called about." "I'm Rosie. Sit anywhere you like, honey." I slid into a booth by the window. Rosie brought me a menu, but Frank was right, the green chili stew was the obvious choice. When it arrived, it was possibly the best thing I'd eaten in months. Rich and spicy and comforting in a way I desperately needed. As I ate, people started coming over to introduce themselves. Maria, who ran the town hall. Tom and Linda, a retired couple who'd been here forever. A young guy named Miguel who worked maintenance for the town. Everyone was impossibly friendly, welcoming, asking about my trip with genuine interest. It was nice. Really nice. For the first time since Derek had dropped his bomb, I felt something other than numbness or pain. I felt seen. Appreciated. Like I mattered to these people even though they'd just met me. After dinner, Rosie wouldn't let me pay. "First meal in Esperanza is always free," she said with a wink. "It's tradition." "That's incredibly kind, but I can't." "Nonsense. You just enjoy your evening. You planning to stay the night?" "We've got a little inn. Nothing fancy, but it's comfortable." I hadn't planned to, but suddenly the idea of driving another 50 miles in the dark sounded terrible. "Is there room?" "Always room," Rosie said. "I'll call ahead for you." The Esperanza Inn was a small adobe building at the edge of town, run by a woman named Carmen who looked about 70 but moved like she was 40. She showed me to a simple but immaculate room with a wrought iron bed, handmade quilts, and a window overlooking the desert. "Breakfast is at 7, Carmen said. "But if you're not a morning person, I can save you a plate." "Sleep well, Mija." That night, I slept better than I had in months. No anxiety, no racing thoughts about the divorce or my failed marriage or my uncertain future. Just deep, dreamless sleep. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon wafting from downstairs. When I checked my phone, I still had no signal, but I wasn't worried. I'd leave after breakfast, get back on the main highway, everything would be fine. Breakfast was perfect: huevos rancheros, fresh tortillas, strong coffee. Carmen sat with me while I ate, telling me about Esperanza's history. How it had been founded in the 1920s by a group of families looking to start fresh. How it had survived the Depression and the Dust Bowl. How it stayed small by choice, never advertising itself, never courting tourism. "We like it quiet," she said. "Just us and the folks who need to find us." That phrasing struck me as odd. "Need to find you?" She smiled mysteriously. "Esperanza means hope, you know. People who find their way here usually need it." After breakfast, I fully intended to leave. But then Maria from the town hall stopped me on the street and asked if I'd help her organize some old town records. Apparently they'd heard I worked in design and she thought I might have ideas for digitizing their archives. It seemed like such a simple, helpful thing to do, and I had nowhere to be, so I said yes. One task led to another. Miguel asked if I could design a new sign for the town entrance. Rosie wanted help redesigning her menu. A woman named Elena asked if I could help her daughter with a school art project. Before I knew it, 3 days had passed. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. Every night, I told myself I'd leave the next morning. But every morning, someone would ask for help with something, or invite me to something, or just stop to chat and make me feel so genuinely welcomed that leaving felt rude. My phone never got signal in Esperanza, but Carmen had Wi-Fi at the inn, somehow, so I could check my email and let Rachel know I was taking an extended leave. She was supportive, told me to take all the time I needed. I started to feel useful again. Needed. Every project I helped with, every person I talked to, I felt a little more like myself. Or maybe like a better version of myself than I'd been in Austin. These people appreciated me. They valued my skills. They made me feel like I mattered. About 3 weeks in, the town threw a little festival in the plaza. Nothing fancy, just music and dancing and food. Everyone brought dishes to share. There were string lights hung between the buildings, and someone had set up a small stage where locals played guitar and sang. I was dancing with Miguel, just friendly dancing, nothing romantic. When I looked around at all these smiling faces, all these people who'd become something like family in such a short time, and I felt genuinely happy. Actually, truly happy. For the first time since the divorce, maybe for the first time in years, I wasn't pretending or forcing it. I was just content. That night, lying in bed at the inn, I made a decision. I didn't want to leave Esperanza. I wanted to stay. Maybe not forever, but for a while longer. Maybe a lot longer. What was waiting for me in Austin anyway? An empty apartment? A job I was burned out on? Memories of a failed marriage? Here, I had purpose. I had community. I had peace. The next morning, I told Carmen my decision. She hugged me tight and said, "I knew you were meant to stay. I could tell from the moment you arrived." Over the next few weeks, I settled into life in Esperanza. I officially quit my job in Austin. Rachel was disappointed but understanding, arranged to have my stuff from storage shipped to a friend's place, and basically committed to this new life I'd stumbled into. I rented a little casita at the edge of town from Tom and Linda. I started taking on design projects remotely. The Wi-Fi was spotty but functional enough. I helped out around town with whatever needed doing. I learned to make tamales from Rosie. I started hiking in the desert every morning. I felt healthy and strong and purposeful in a way I'd never felt in Austin. People in town started calling me their miracle worker because of all the little projects I'd helped with. The new town sign looked professional. The archive system I set up for Maria made everything accessible. Rosie's new menu increased her, admittedly limited, business. Elena's daughter won a regional art competition with a project I'd helped design. I became part of the fabric of Esperanza. And it felt amazing. About 2 months into my stay, I was having coffee with Carmen when I asked her something I'd been wondering about. "How do you all make money out here? I mean, Rosie's diner can't have enough customers to stay afloat, and there's no real tourism, and..." Carmen smiled that mysterious smile again. "We get by. Everyone contributes what they can. It's not about money here, Mija. It's about community." It was a non-answer, but I didn't push. I'd learned that people in Esperanza were private about certain things. And honestly, it didn't matter to me how it all worked. I was happy. That was enough. Then, one morning in late October, everything changed. I woke up and decided I wanted to drive to the nearest big town. I thought it was called Socorro, about 60 miles east, to get some supplies I couldn't find in Frank's general store. Art supplies, specifically. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done since college, and I needed better materials than what was available in Esperanza. I got in my CRV and headed out on the dirt road that led back to the main highway. I drove for about 30 minutes, following the same route I'd taken into town months earlier. But I couldn't find the main highway. The dirt road just kept going, winding through the desert, but the turnoff to the paved highway wasn't where I remembered it. I drove for another hour, sure I'd somehow missed it. Eventually, I turned around and came back to Esperanza, frustrated but figuring I'd just gotten confused. The next day, I tried again. This time I paid more attention, even made marks on my map. I'd printed one out since my phone still didn't work outside town. I drove in the other direction, thinking maybe I'd mixed up which way I'd originally come from. Same thing. No main highway. No paved road. Just endless desert. I tried not to panic. I asked Frank about it that evening at the general store. How do you get to the main highway from here? I've tried twice and I can't find it. Frank looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Why do you need to leave, Sarah? I don't need to leave, I said. I just wanted to get some supplies. From a bigger town. We have everything you need here, he said gently. But I wanted specific art supplies, and order them online. They'll ship here. Frank, that's not the point. I just want to know how to get out of town. To the main highway. The way I came in. He sighed and sat down heavily on a stool. Sarah, sit down. I need to tell you something. My heart started racing. What? Esperanza isn't on most maps. And the road in, well, it's not always there. I laughed, but it sounded shrill even to my own ears. What are you talking about? I drove in on a road. A dirt road that connected to a highway. It was there. It was there when you needed it to be there, Frank said carefully. Esperanza appears to people who need it. When they need it. And the roads, they're only there when they're supposed to be. I stood up, backing away from him. That's insane. That's not how roads work. That's not how anything works. I know how it sounds, Frank said, his voice gentle. But think about it, Sarah. When you found us, you were lost. Empty. Hurting. You needed hope, Esperanza. The town found you. Like it finds everyone who ends up here. No, I said, shaking my head. No, this is crazy. You're telling me I'm trapped here. Not trapped, Frank said quickly. Never trapped. But you can't leave until you're ready. Until you're healed. Until you've found what you came here to find. I ran out of the store and back to my casita, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of elaborate prank or I was having a mental breakdown. That was it. The divorce had broken something in my brain and I was hallucinating all of this. But everything felt real. The adobe walls of my casita. The wind in the desert. The weight of my body. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't hallucinating. Over the next week, I tried everything. I tried driving out in different directions, nothing but endless desert, no matter which way I went. I tried walking, hiking out into the wasteland until I was exhausted and had to turn back. I tried staying up all night to see if the town somehow changed when everyone was asleep. Nothing worked. I confronted Carmen, Rosie, Maria, everyone I'd gotten close to. They all told me the same thing Frank had said. Esperanza existed outside normal space somehow. It appeared to people who needed it, who were lost or broken or searching. And you couldn't leave until you'd healed whatever had brought you there in the first place. How long? I demanded, tears streaming down my face as I stood in Rosie's diner at midnight. How long have you all been here? Time works differently in Esperanza, Rosie said softly. For some people, a few weeks. For others, years. Tom and Linda have been here for 15 years. Miguel for 8. Frank has been here longer than anyone can remember. And you just accept this? You're okay with being prisoners? We're not prisoners, Maria said, putting a hand on my shoulder. We're refugees. We came here because the outside world was too much. Too painful. Too broken. Here, we have peace. Purpose. Community. Why would we want to leave? Because it's insane. I shouted. Because this isn't real. Because you can't just trap people in some magical town that doesn't exist. You're not trapped, Carmen said firmly. When you're ready, when you've truly healed, when you've found your hope again, the road will be there. It always is. Everyone who's wanted to leave has been able to leave. Eventually. Eventually, I repeated bitterly. So I'm stuck here for, what, months? Years? Forever. That's up to you, Frank said. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of despair deeper than anything I'd felt after the divorce. I was angry at everyone in town for not telling me the truth. Angry at myself for staying so long, for getting comfortable, for letting my guard down. Angry at the universe for whatever cosmic joke had landed me in a town that shouldn't exist. I stopped helping with projects. Stopped going to Rosie's for meals. Stopped talking to people. I just sat in my casita, trying to figure out what healing even meant, what would make the road appear, how I could force myself to be ready to leave. One night, Carmen knocked on my door. I tried to ignore her, but she kept knocking until I finally answered. I brought you dinner, she said, holding out a covered plate. You need to eat, Mija. I'm not your Mija, I snapped. I'm your prisoner. She walked past me into the casita and set the plate on the table. Sit down. We're going to talk. Something in her voice, not harsh, but absolutely certain, made me obey. Carmen sat across from me and looked at me with those knowing eyes. You think you want to leave. But you don't. Not really. How can you possibly? Because I've seen it before, she interrupted. People who come here, find peace, and then panic when they realize they can't leave on their terms. They think they want to go back to their old lives. But what they really want is control. They want to know they can leave, even if they wouldn't. I started to argue, but she held up her hand. What are you so desperate to get back to, Sarah? A job that was burning you out? An empty apartment? Friends who probably barely noticed you were gone? A city full of memories of a man who betrayed you? Tears started rolling down my face. You were happy here, Carmen continued. Genuinely happy. For the first time in years, maybe ever. You had purpose. You had people who valued you. You were creating beautiful things and helping others and healing. But the moment you found out you couldn't leave exactly when you wanted to, all of that stopped mattering. Why? Because I need to know I have a choice, I said through tears. I need to know I'm not trapped. You do have a choice, Carmen said. You can spend however long you're here being miserable and angry, fighting against something you can't change. Or you can accept where you are and continue the healing you'd started. The road will appear when it's time. It always does. But you have to actually do the work of healing, not just go through the motions waiting for an escape hatch. She stood up and walked to the door. Think about what you're really running from, Sarah. Because I don't think it's Esperanza. After she left, I sat there for hours, thinking about what she'd said. She was right. About all of it. I'd been happy in Esperanza. Really, truly happy. Not because I was trapped, but because I'd finally stopped running from my pain and started actually addressing it. I'd found purpose and community and peace. I'd rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. And the moment I'd found out I couldn't leave exactly when I wanted, I'd thrown all of that away. Not because I actually wanted to leave, but because I wanted control. I wanted the choice. I wanted to prove that I wasn't vulnerable or dependent or in need of help. But I was all of those things. And that was okay. The next morning, I apologized to everyone I'd pushed away. I told them I understood now, or at least that I was trying to. I went back to helping with projects, spending time with people, living my life instead of just waiting for it to start again somewhere else. And slowly, over weeks and then months, something shifted inside me. I forgave Derek. Not because what he did was okay, but because holding on to that anger was only hurting me. I forgave myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for staying in a relationship that had been dying long before he cheated. I let go of my expectations about what my life was supposed to look like and started appreciating what it actually was. I painted. God, did I paint? I filled canvases with desert landscapes, with portraits of the people in Esperanza, with abstract expressions of emotion I'd been holding in for years. My work got better. Deeper. More honest. I fell in love with the desert, with the endless sky, with the way sunrise painted the mountains pink and gold. I learned to find peace in simplicity, in knowing everyone in town. In days that followed gentle rhythms instead of chaotic schedules. I became whole again. Not the person I was before Derek, but someone new. Someone I actually liked. And then, one morning in late January, almost 6 months after I'd first arrived, I woke up and knew. I was ready to leave. Not because I hated Esperanza or was desperate to escape. But because my time here was complete. I'd healed what needed healing. I'd found my hope again. And while part of me would always love this place and these people, I knew I needed to return to the real world and apply everything I'd learned. I got dressed and walked out to my car, expecting nothing different than any other time I'd tried to leave. But there it was. The dirt road, clear as day, leading off into the distance. And in the far distance, I could see pavement. The highway. I stood there crying, overwhelmed with emotion I couldn't even name. Relief and sadness and gratitude and fear all tangled together. One by one, people emerged from their homes and businesses. They'd known, somehow. They always knew. Carmen hugged me first. You did the work, Mija. I'm so proud of you. Frank pressed something into my hand, a small turquoise stone. So you remember, he said simply. Rosie gave me a bag of food for the road. Green chili stew. You'll miss it. Maria, Miguel, Tom, Linda, Elena, everyone came to say goodbye. There were tears and hugs and promises that I'd never forget them, that they'd never forget me. Will I be able to find my way back? I asked Carmen. If I wanted to visit. She smiled. If you need to, you will. But I don't think you'll need to, Sarah. You're ready for whatever comes next. I got in my car and started driving. The dirt road led me back to the highway, and suddenly I was in normal New Mexico again. Towns appeared on signs. My phone got signal, 37 missed calls, hundreds of texts and emails, all from the last 6 months. But here's the thing. When I tried to look up Esperanza on my phone, I couldn't find it. No town by that name anywhere near where I'd been. I tried to retrace my route, but I couldn't remember exactly where the turnoff had been. It was like my memory of how to get there had been gently erased. I drove to Santa Fe and got a hotel room. I spent 3 days just processing everything, trying to figure out how to return to normal life. Then I drove back to Austin. My apartment was still there, though my lease had nearly expired. My job was gone, obviously. Most of my friends had stopped reaching out after the first few weeks of no response. My parents were angry and worried and relieved all at once. But I was different. Fundamentally, permanently different. I started freelancing as a designer from home. I started painting seriously and even sold a few pieces at a local gallery. I made new friends slowly, carefully, choosing people who saw me and valued me for who I actually was. I started therapy and worked through everything about my marriage and the divorce. I never told anyone about Esperanza. Who would believe me? But I didn't need anyone to believe me. I knew what had happened. I knew where I'd been. I knew what I'd learned. Sometimes, late at night, I take out that turquoise stone Frank gave me and hold it, remembering the town that saved me. Wondering if it's still out there, appearing to other lost souls who need hope. I've tried to find it again. A few times. When things got hard or I felt that old emptiness creeping back, I've driven out to New Mexico, searching for that turnoff, that hand-painted sign. But I've never found it. Carmen was right. I don't need it anymore. But I'm grateful it was there when I did. That some impossible, magical place exists or existed, or exists outside normal space and time, I don't even know, that catches people when they're falling and holds them until they can stand on their own again. I don't know if Esperanza was real in the way we normally think of real. Maybe it was some kind of collective unconscious manifestation. Maybe it was a place outside normal physics. Maybe I had a very elaborate, very consistent mental breakdown and hallucinated 6 months in the desert. But it doesn't matter. Real or not, it healed me. It gave me hope when I had none. It showed me that I could be valued and appreciated and useful. It taught me that happiness isn't about control or plans or having everything figured out. It's about being present, being open, being willing to receive help even when you don't think you need it. I'm happy now. Not the forced happiness I had with Derek, not the numb acceptance I fell into after the divorce. Real, genuine, sustainable happiness. I have work I care about. I have relationships that matter. I have a life that feels authentic and true. And sometimes, when I'm painting a desert landscape or making green chili stew from Rosie's recipe or just sitting quietly in the evening, I swear I can feel Esperanza out there somewhere, hidden in some fold of reality, waiting for the next lost soul who needs it. I hope they find it. I hope the road appears for them just when they need it most. I hope they let themselves stay long enough to heal. I hope they find their hope, their Esperanza, whatever form it takes. Because we all need a place like that sometimes. A place outside normal life where we can fall apart safely and put ourselves back together better than before. Whether it's a impossible desert town or a therapist's office or a friend's couch or 6 months alone in the woods, we all need that space to break and remake ourselves. I was lucky enough to find mine when I needed it most. And even though I can never go back, I carry it with me. In the turquoise stone in my pocket. In the paintings I create. In the way I move through the world now, slower, more intentional, more present. In the way I treat people, knowing that everyone is fighting battles I can't see, that everyone could use a little bit of hope. My divorce didn't break me. It cracked me open. And Esperanza was the place where light got in, where I learned to heal, where I found hope again. I don't know if I'll ever understand what that town really was. But I know what it gave me. And I know that somewhere out there, maybe someone else is finding that same gift right now. If you're reading this and you're lost and broken and don't know how to keep going, keep driving. Keep searching. Your Esperanza is out there. Maybe it's a real place, maybe it's a person, maybe it's something inside yourself you haven't discovered yet. But it's there. And when you find it, let yourself stay. Do the work. Accept the help. Let yourself heal. The road out will appear when you're ready. It always does.